Now, I, like anybody else who's on the internet looking for a good time, feeling fancy free, I am always very attracted to like titles, like really, really handy titles for videos that I might be interested in. And how to strengthen yourself through suffering. Well, I'm suffering all the time. So if I can also get, jacked, either physically, emotionally, mentally, through my suffering, well, fucking sign my ass up. Holy shit. Let's do it. Mr. Peterson, sir, please tell me in your biblical series how to strengthen myself through suffering.
There are people who have only good in their life, relatively speaking, who don't believe in God. So I'm challenging my own.
Oh no! I thought it was going to be mostly Jordan Peterson, but it's living mound of mashed potatoes, Dennis Prager. Oh no!
Question, because I've wrestled with this, because I think the hardest law in the 613 laws of the Torah is to love God with all your heart and all your soul. I long believe that's the hardest. I have no problem trying to obey
that's to
God.
throw yourself into existence fully as if it's good.
Yeah.
I always get kind of weirded out by people when they're like, you should throw yourself like wholesale into loving God and love God and God, you got to love God. And it feels like a one-sided relationship. It feels very dysfunctional, doesn't it? Like, I mean, if you consider like what you can objectively, from the lens of being a Christian or a Jew or whatever, but you apply a little bit of rationality into it, like, well, what does actually God provide for me? Well, yeah, he made the world, but he didn't just make it for me. He made it for everybody. But, okay, let's say that God did make me. Okay. Well, unless you see something that God in specific, and you're not just being like, well, something good happened, it obviously had to be God, then the only thing that you can really say God did good for you is make you. Do you just have to, like, love him for the rest of your life for that? What if your life sucks? What if, like, everything is shit? Like, do you have to be that way? It just doesn't feel like an ongoing relationship. Relationships take work, and both sides have to commit and come into the middle, and like, never mind. It's whatever. Edgy atheist YouTuber Jeff Holiday over here.
Yes,
and that's a rough one because,
that's
geez,
right.
look at it. It's
That's
pretty
right.
rough.
That's
man.
right. That's right.
So Solzhenitsyn was struck in the concentration camps by goodness, though, constantly. And it was out of that seed of the observation of goodness that the whole Gulag archipelago emerged, and therefore, in no small part, the fall of the Soviet Union.
That's a prophet. Solzhenitsyn is a prophet.
Yeah, and he said that he really noticed particularly, and he was atheistic when he went into the camps, that the devout religious believers were able to maintain their moral integrity in camp.
That's a weird one. So, okay, yeah, sure. I'm not going to try and attempt to pronounce his name, but yes, an account of going through one of the most horrific things on the planet. While you're suffering, can you glean some degree of comfort, and being able to hold on, by utilizing religion? Sure, but is that religion or is that hope? Is that something that you're getting from religion? Because I got to tell you, there are plenty of people who have been brutally murdered in the name of God, more than any other reason in history. So it's still a very strange thing. Like, yeah, I don't know.
And physical.
Often, yes,
Yeah.
not always, because he said, no, let's not push this. Sometimes people just got shot.
Yeah.
But he saw people, and he tells very compelling stories of people who thrived and became healthier in the face of the privation under the...
Thrived in a concentration camp? Not the word I would use. Just
ultimate moral authority of their own shining soul. And the stories in the Gulag, especially in Volume 2, they're unbelievably compelling. And Frankl said similar things. And Solzhenitsyn was particularly careful not to say, that doesn't mean I'm saying that everyone who failed because of their moral flaws, or that purity of heart would necessarily save you. He's a complex thinker, but...
Wait. So you're making the argument, then you're even including the stipulation from the person whose argument you're enhancing. But then why not actually consider that? Why not have that be part of the conversation? Why do you have to be like, yeah, this is a thing. It's a thing. Also, he said that it might not be a thing. But it's a thing. Like, it's weird. It's a weird circular way of trying to just embrace one aspect to it and dismiss the other while still at least giving it, some due so nobody can call you on it.
That's one of the miracles I think he saw when I was talking about him earlier, because he talked about how some people were hardy and robust, and he was careful to say it's not like you can secret your way to health in a gulag, right? He wasn't being flippant about it, but he was noticing that some people who had
they wouldn't
more
cooperate.
resources,
They wouldn't cooperate with the
but they were
Gulag
unbroken.
authorities.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is the gulag thing. And I don't know what point he's trying to make in this. What does maintain moral integrity mean in the terms of being put through the Holocaust? Like, they just kept their belief, or is he saying that they acted better than no religious people? Like Jordan Waffle, I suspected is meaningless. Yeah, I'm not really even sure exactly what this relevant point is supposed to be. But then again, it's also Jordan Peterson is a hardcore Jesus freak now. He's sitting down with PragerU. I'm pretty sure the rest of these guys are very religious. The name of this series is titled Exodus. So all of this is done in service to enhance a very specific framing narrative, But I don't know. We're gonna try and decipher it.
Yeah.
They were never become trustees, and they tell the
It was Cool Hand Luke.
yeah.
It's also the epistemic humility, though. The difference between the presumption that you know all there is and it's bad, and you're saying, I don't have it all. I mean, you think those last words that Job says at the very end of the book of Job, therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful me, which I knew not.
Right.
At the end of it all saying, I didn't actually understand the whole picture.
Well, it's also hope in that, because
Yes.
one of the things is that if you're suffering terribly, there's two options in front of you in some sense. One is you're suffering terribly and it's unjust, and you're suffering terribly because the cosmos itself is flawed in its fundamental structure. And that's really
What in the fuck is that supposed to mean? You're suffering, and one option is the cosmos in and of itself is corrupt or incorrect or something. Why does it have to be a giant metaphysical fucking reason? Like, it's so completely bizarre. Like, sometimes you can just identify why somebody is suffering, but I'm gonna try and understand what he's saying.
Cain's complaint against God. The other possibility is you're suffering at least in part because you're not everything you could be. And that's a terrible burden to take onto yourself.
Okay, so those are the two options. Because I want to try and understand this. I do. So let's try this one more time. We're gonna hear it all the way through again.
If you're suffering terribly, there's two options in front of you in some sense. One is you're suffering terribly and it's unjust, and you're suffering terribly because the cosmos itself is flawed in its fundamental structure. And that's really Cain's complaint against God. The other possibility is you're suffering at least in part because you're not everything you could be.
Okay, that is really dumb. That is very, very stupid. Either the cosmos is flawed, which is a wildly reductive way of saying sometimes bad things happen. It could be a stray bullet clipped you in your spine and now you're paralyzed, Well, the universe is a complex place and it's flawed in its design. Oopsie doopsie. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? That's so dumb.
And that's a terrible burden to take onto yourself.
Or it's all your fault because you're not being all that you can be.
Because it's the burden of your own suffering. But it's also unbelievably hopeful, because it could be that, I think maybe Frankel recounts that story. I don't remember where I read it. A woman who visited a psychiatrist and who said to the psychiatrist, I really hope there's something wrong with me. And the psychiatrist said, why? She said, well, if there's something wrong with me, there's hope, because I might be able to fix it. But if there's something wrong with the structure of existence, so I'm fated to suffer in this way, then everything's despair.
And again, this is a hugely reductive fucking way of looking at this. Now, sure, yeah, there's a really hopeful message there of like, maybe something bad that's happening is actually my fault, in which case I actually do have the power to be able to change something about myself to ease my suffering. But that also takes away something of a bit of agency when it's not about you and you're suffering because of something that doesn't have anything to do with you. that is happening around you in your environment. Maybe it was because of somebody else. It takes away from the fact that maybe you can also impact that as well. There's no predeterminism, that you do have an ability to effect a change. Not always, but sometimes.
People that I have seen who've transcended their tragedy and malevolence that have pursued them, they did have that sense of their own ignorance, even with regards to the conclusions they drew about their suffering.
And
So-
Frankl himself has this very odd story at the end of the book, where after this array of
What in the fuck is that? Is that an animatronic? Like, I'm not trying to be cruel about, somebody's appearance or anything, but is that... Did they repurpose a fucking robot from, like, the Hall of Presidents or some shit? What the fuck? I'm really not trying to be cruel about, like, this thing's appearance, but, like, it does not seem real.
unspeakable horrors. He then talks about this particularly sadistic, brutal figure.
I'm hypnotized. The voice, the affectation. What the fuck? The Potato Wizard. Oh, no. Is that Benjamin Franklin? Yeah, dude. That's weird.
Whom he'd known from some clinic, the Stein, whatever, in Vienna or something. And then he says that he heard a story that this man, this concentration camp figure, had been sent off to a Russian camp at the end of the war. And then heard from another colleague that this brutal figure had actually been extremely humane and supportive as an inmate of a Soviet camp. And it's that very enigmatic.
Why is that? Why is that interesting? That put into a different situation, somebody might seem nice, and then they get put into a different situation, they turn into a brutal asshole? How is that interesting? Yeah, we know. That's how shit works. Yeah, absolutely. That's how you can have, like, a loving, caring, doting, husband who goes and gets shipped off to war and becomes a brutal, bloodthirsty fucking maniac. Yeah, humans are dynamic. Who would have fucking thought?
Ending of Frankel's book, where it's almost as if to say, even where you're convinced that there's evil that's irredeemable,
Right.
that maybe there's a
There's still
possibility.
hope.
Yes.
Hope for redemption.
I know that's a bit. It seems like a bit, but it isn't. It's very puzzling.
Why do you think
part of the book.
why is that?
Yeah, people are dynamic. They change based upon their choices, their environment, the support structure around them, the context and the morals of the social environment they find themselves in. Wow, what a fucking concept. Why does it take 7 old dusty fucks in one room to realize, to have this revelatory fucking moment that we've understood in sociology for, probably thousands of years? What the fuck?
That idea considered so dangerous?
What idea?
James.
This idea that, because even when
Because we want it to be,
it immediately goes into blaming the victim. Like you went to pains to say he wasn't saying that anybody could, right, through the inner light of their soul, come out positively in a gulag. But there's such a resistance against this notion. It's like it's almost outside the Overton window to say you can alleviate some of your own suffering by your orientation towards the world. It's almost considered a dangerous proposition now, and we have to.
No, it's considered human nature. What are you talking about? It seems to me like this is all trying to make an argument that they're like faith and endurance through a type of faith is like the way that this is going to be accomplished. Not that this is a naturally occurring, observable, and testable even aspect of human sociology and psychology. What the fuck?
To go to pains to make caveats about it when we even mention it.
Yeah, well, it's a tricky business. When my daughter was young and she was really ill, I told her when she was very young, I said to her, don't you use your illness as an excuse, ever. because you'll confuse yourself. Then you won't know what you can do. You're going to have a hard time doing things. But if you use your illness as an excuse, if you corrupt yourself morally, which you have in some sense every right to do because of the depth of your suffering, and which would be perfectly understandable under the circumstances, it will do nothing at all but make the situation far worse.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Jordan Peterson crouched down in front of like a little girl trying to say this shit to her? What a fucking psychopath. No wonder his daughter's so fucked up. What the fuck, dude? What the shit was that?